All right, so now that we have our animation well underway here, we have those extremes and key poses blocked in, we have our breakdowns blocked in. What we're ready to do is start coming in here and doing some graph editor work. So what are we looking for when we're working with the graph editor? One of the big things we're going to be looking for is any curves that just seem really off. And you might have some in your scene. This is a fairly straightforward animation, so there's a good chance you won't. But when you're switching between step mode and spline mode, maybe you click the wrong type of spline mode, or maybe you just have some anomalies. It's not uncommon, and we need to go in and correct those. There's other things we can do as well just to get proper motion, which is going to be things like moving through the scene, at what rate should that go. And we can make some nice adjustments as well, similar to how we did the first bouncing ball. We can add a little bit more spring into our Y movements to make the character hang in the air a bit longer and have a bit more appeal. So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is translation through the scene. So moving through space. For us, that's going to come in the form of X, and it's going to come in the form of Z. Now, traditionally, if we take a look at Z, Z usually is the axis that deals with moving through space. Now, something unique about Z is, generally speaking, it's best if it's in a linear mode, meaning a straight line that's moving at a constant rate. Right now you can see as this ease in, ease out type setup, and that's not exactly ideal. So what we can do is we can switch this to linear mode, utilizing this tangent here that looks like a dot with a straight line, but we don't want to apply this to our whole animation. We just want to apply it to the Z channel. So if you're not familiar with this yet, I clicked into the Z channel here. You can see this is the one that shows us all of these. This is going to give us Translate Z. We can zoom out here. I'm just using Alt and clicking with my right click here to zoom. You can also use your middle mouse wheel if you prefer, just scrolling. And it's pressing middle mouse wheel to go side to side. We can highlight this by just clicking and dragging across all those. And then we can come in here and we can click that linear button there to make these go in a linear motion. Now, when I do this, you're going to see that our motion trail changes just a bit. And if we hit play, we're going to have more constant progress through the scene with the ball. It's not going to stop and go as much. And what it does is it kind of just prevents sliding on the ground. It makes it so it sticks a little bit better and stays in place. Now, this is also a bit complicated because we do have some side-to-side motion with the ball rig here in terms of Translate X. So Translate X also has a similar sort of setup here. We can decide if we want that to be splined or linear. We could always test this by taking this and setting it to linear and seeing if that gives us a better result. And you can see it does kind of straighten that out. I accidentally moved my camera here, so let me go into my camera bookmarks and just get back to view 1. But we can see if we like that as well for that motion. I think I actually do like that for the most part. We can also decide to edit through deletion. So if I come in here to Z, you can see I have this midsection here on the jump, and it's not exactly in the linear motion. It's moving backwards a little bit. I could delete this to continue that forward. And let me just make sure it's still on screen. That should be okay. But I could come into each of the jumps on the Translate Z, and I could delete these. Now, why might I want to do that? Well, technically, an object can't really translate backwards when jumping, right? It's a forward motion. So in each of these midsections that indicates a jump, I can delete those to just get a cleaner line and a cleaner motion. I can do the same thing with my Translate X, just coming in here and deleting these. So that way, as it's moving through those jumps, it's not moving side to side at all, and we're just having nice, clean motion throughout the animation. That's going to clean up the curves even further. So that's going to be one of the first things I'm going to do on mine, is set those to linear to make that motion through the scene have a constant progress. For Z and X. Coming to Translate Y, though, I don't want that to happen. I want to maybe add a bit more sproing to these. And like we did originally, what I can do is I can add more sproing by using a broken tangent. So coming into the first frame here, I can highlight that, and then I can come over here and I can convert this to a broken animation tangent, and I can angle this up to get a better bell curve to this y-axis. I'm going to grab the tail end of the whisker here, And we'll just go ahead and tilt that up. Whoop. Make sure you get the whisker, not the frame. And you can see how that's going to give me a nicer curve. I can then repeat this process by going to the next one here and doing the same. Just kind of moving that up. I'm also noting this isn't quite in the middle here, so I can actually move this frame around if I want to by just using my middle mouse button to click and drag there. And we can get that nice and in the center of this motion and really adjust this to have a good amount of hang time so that as this springs up, it hangs in the air longer and gets a nicer arc. I can do the same thing here, and here, and here, and here. So I'm just going to break these at the same time. If you try grabbing these handles simultaneously, you can actually see you can sort of move them up together. Not exactly easy, but there we go. We can get that to have the next spring there. And then we can come to the next one here and do the same. I'll just break both those simultaneously. Grab their knobs in between and then adjust them manually to get that nice arc so that we're getting these nice bounces between everything. As you can see, it's very easy to misclick in here. Control Z is going to be your best friend. So that's what I did there is I accidentally moved them all. So let's go ahead and break that last one, and that will take care of our translates, at least for the first pass here, where we're just getting these nice dramatic mounds and fleshing out our animation curves. So now our translates are all cleaned up. You'll see that we're going to have a nice snappiness to this and a nice springiness in terms of this motion. The next thing I'm going to want to clean up is my rotates. And this might actually require some manual adjustments to just make these follow a little bit better. We've changed our motion trails pretty dramatically. So what I'm going to do is come into the ball here and just click to next frame. And look for those stretch frames where it's rotating and just correct this manually initially to follow the curve. This is the point where coming in and using auto keyframe might be useful because now all our keys are in place. We're not going to be making any big pose changes. We're just going to be tweaking existing ones. If we turn that on, this will save us from having to remember to press keyframe every time. And what I'm going to do is just make this follow this motion trail as closely as possible, maybe even coming in here and having the midsection running through it. So that way, as this rotates, it's going to follow this trail better and make more sense visually, especially since my motion trail shifted. Remember, I adjusted both the X and the Z, so it's in a different position, and the Y curve makes it so the angle of the ball is much broader on these jumps. So once again, just coming into the stretch frames and rotating this to be aiming where it needs to go. Notice I'm not actually using individual axes here. I'm using that midsection that lets me free rotate. That saves me a little bit of time, just kind of positioning. And I also like to look down the curve so that way I can see when the ball kind of aligns with the center. So that's what I am trying to achieve, if you're wondering why I'm using the camera the way I am and why I'm using the midsection the way I am. It's to try and achieve that as closely as possible. All right. And then we can see that jump. All right, this one's quite a bit different. I think this will add a lot more appeal. Then we'll just move forward here. Just this moving forward. Okay, that one wasn't too bad to begin with. And then we'll get to our final one we care about, which is this one here. This one's off screen, but we still care because remember that interpolation, the motion is on screen. So I want to make sure you get that right. There we go. So that should add a bit more appeal to that, and that looks a lot better. So we're getting a pretty polished animation at this stage. Moving down into the rotates, it can be worthwhile to check these and just make sure there's nothing really weird going on with them. So I'm going to do rotate X, Y, and Z all together. And one of the things I might want to change up is this midsection here. So this is a good example of when curves kind of do weird things. You can see this is kind of swooping up and over. It looks like me sitting at my computer desk with my little hands out, getting that arch back going there. Over here, you got this sort of swish swoosh where it swishes that way, just a little bit. You got to watch out for that because basically that means it's rotating backwards, then rotating forward. And we don't like any of that. So we see this pattern here. And this is in particular the midsection here. So these here are our stretches that we're seeing. And I'm actually not 100% sure what these are. I think these are actually the airborne pose. That's when it's in the air. So what we could do is we could actually just highlight these middle ones here that are offending us, and we could hit delete. And what that's going to do is it's going to give this a bit more rotation. So you can see what we were doing, I hit Control Z there, is we're forcing this to be at 0 rotation at the top points, but that doesn't really make much sense. So if I delete this, what happens is we get a tilt that's in between when it's jumping. And we're going to want to do that to each of the rotational axes, and this will make it feel less robotic and more organic. So I'm going to do it for the last one there. I just had to find where that was at. And let's come to the rotate Ys. Ooh, okay, we're going to wait on rotate Y. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. But we can take a look at that. That's pretty wild. Oh, know what's going on there. Let's come to the rotate Zs, though. They look a little bit more tame. And we can kind of just use a predictive model to figure this out. So we know that in the air, we want this to resume rotation. We can just delete the aerial-based poses and keep the other ones, regardless of what's going on there. Just delete that aerial-based pose because that's going to be what matters the most. So look for when it's in the air. And that's where it lands. That's it in the air. Okay. So let's just go ahead and check that and make sure we didn't mess anything up. All right, that looks good. It's looking a lot smoother. And let's do the same with the rotate Y. So the rotate Y, this is confusing. I don't know what's going on here. We can just use our model again. It's in the air, delete it. Okay, that makes sense. Squashing, it's in the air, delete it. It's in the air, delete it. It's in the air, delete it. So we can just kind of use the prediction there. And there is some craziness going on with this one with the rotate Y. The rotate Y is kind of the aim angle. So it makes the most sense here where it kind of turns and then there where it turns. So should be okay. There's very subtle turns there, so I'm not too worried. Let's hit play and see how that looks. And that's looking pretty good. We got some nice spring to it. It's not wobbly anymore. The rotations feel nice, and it feels like it's really going. Now, the one complaint I would say is it does look like it's skipping through the woods, like it's anthropomorphic. So if I wanted to get that idea that it was bouncing off into the woods like a kid kicked it too hard, I'm going to need to work on figuring out how that might go. Now, my best bet would probably be to use some reference because I don't even know where to begin with that. The other thing is it probably needs to lose energy faster, and the squash and stretch probably needs to be a bit more subtle. Now, if you do want to check the squash and stretch, by the way, we can do that by coming down here to the squash and stretch, and we can see whether or not it's getting more subtle or not. And you can see it actually is here, except for at the very end. I could actually just grab this handle and move this down. But I could use this to control this here, so we get a bit less stretch and a bit less squash. And I'm just holding shift and middle mouse buttoning to move this up. And we could just visually kind of drive this to where we're giving it less each time it bounces. So that way, from a visual perspective, it is tapering on intensity there. And that's one way we can make it look like it's losing energy there. We might also have to dampen the rotation and make it bounce less far. Now that's a lot more challenging because that means I'm probably going to need to get more keyframes in here, but this at least will make it look like it's losing energy towards the end. I, however, don't really like that now because it almost feels accidental. Since we had it looking like a character before, I'm just going to undo these, get back to the intensity I did have, and maintain that as my final pass. So at this stage, I think we can consider this animation ready and animation complete. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to give this a shot. Go ahead and do a refinement pass on your animation curves. See if you can get some better spring to the ball, clean up the X and Z axes, make those operate linear. Look for how you can clean up those rotations by removing them from the jumps and adjusting their angles to match your new curves. and see if you can create a nice looking animation of your own. So go ahead and give that a shot, and then we're going to start to progress forward and talk about how we can move into the rendering process with this and produce a final video file.